You know, Jim doesn't debate very often. He's not a message guy for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party needs people to express their ideas. And good luck to Mr. Burridge. We appreciate the fact that he's doing that, especially in this campaign.
Patrick?
Right now there's an 18.4-cent national tax on gasoline. That's on top of what the states themselves choose to tax gasoline buyers. Do you support a tax decrease to help alleviate the high gas prices? Or if not, what would you do to help curb the gas prices?
Representative Cannon?
I was talking to a very senior Utah person involved in transportation. I won't name him because he hasn't agreed to make these numbers public. But he said, we're funding the Lehigh bypass so that people out west of Lehigh can get to the freeway more quickly. I said, wonderful. How long is it going to take? He said, 4 years. I was astonished. I said, what for? And he said, well, we have to do environmentally. Went on, because it's an interchange with the freeway, it's a federal environmental issue, and we have to do it at the highest level, so you're doing an EIS. And I asked him what the issues were, and apparently some farmers have planted grass that would maybe wetlands kind of grass, and I got more and more astonished. And finally I said, how much would we have to pay in taxes if we could do this our way in Utah? Because Utah has a remarkable history of being good to the environment. He said we could knock down the federal gas tax by 8 to 10 cents and still get the same quality of roads if we didn't do it the federal government's way. So yeah, I think that there are bills out there that would eliminate the role of the federal government in our transportation system. I think we ought to bring down taxes, and we ought to improve our roads based upon the system that we have today.
Mr. Burridge.
You know, I'm more interested in coming up with solutions to our overarching transportation problems rather than looking at saying a gas tax decrease would solve the problem. It's not that I'm not opposed to decreasing the gas tax, because it's a regressive tax, and I think it's problematic. But at the same time, we need to have a man-on-the-moon effort to curb our dependency on oil, and we need to invest in all kinds of new energies when it comes to wind and solar and cellulosic ethanol, which we could grow potatoes in our rural districts, which would be a boon to their economy, much like Brazilians use sugar, because it's an energy-positive solution and be good for our rural environments. When it comes to lowering the expenses of our gasoline, I'm more important in using the money that we're giving away to huge corporations, oil companies, and like $60 billion to the oil companies, and investing that in new renewable energies that it's cleaner, it's more economical, and it's better for our future. And that's the way I would approach the problem with gas prices.
Professor Dessart.
Gentlemen, the recent New Jersey Supreme Court ruling regarding gay marriage is likely to reignite this issue again nationally. What would you do as a member of Congress at the federal level as far as the issue of gay marriage in the United States?
Mr. Burridge.
Well, the state of the law right now is that under the Defense of Marriage Act of 1995, that right now it doesn't matter what New Jersey does, that's not going to affect us here in Utah. Right now, the police powers of the state govern marriage laws, and that's important because every state has different marriage situations. In Louisiana, they have civil law where they divide assets in a different way. The fact is, people are going to cohabitate, whether they're gay, whether they're straight, whether they're married or not. And the states are best to equip how we're going to have predictability, equity, and fairness when it comes to probate, when it comes to division of assets, and when these couples have children. And in our state, we could do a better job at having local control of our marriage laws with regard to having predictability on cohabitation. It's clear that the people in this district do not want gay marriage in our state. I believe marriage is between a man and a woman. I've never thought that the discrimination that can occur to homosexuals is remedied by marriage. I've never believed that. I don't see how marriage will remedy any of those things. Marriage needs to be between a man and a woman, and I would advocate for that in Congress.
Representative Cannon.
I'm a little surprised, but we largely agree on that topic. But let me just add this fact. When the state decided to sanction marriage by licensing it, those acts became acts of the state. And unfortunately, under the Constitution, the full faith and credit clause is the dominant factor. DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, is a way of saying, hey, at a lower level than the Constitution, we think these things should not be handled under the full faith and credit clause. But there is no guarantee that even this Supreme Court, which is much more conservative than it has been historically, would find that a state's laws that relate to marriage should not receive full faith and credit in another state. And that's the fundamental problem that we have, and that's why I've supported, it's the reason for supporting the marriage amendment that defines marriage as between one man and a woman, so that a marriage in a state that decides that it can be between people of the same sex can't be enforced in another state. And so it is a federal issue, it's forced on us, and it's one that I think that we need to deal with through an amendment.
Just a follow-up question. What are the origins of your issue position on this particular issue? And Representative Cannon, you said you were surprised that you actually agreed. Why are you surprised?
Well, I'm an attorney. I've practiced domestic relations law, and I know how complex it can get. In fact, I've had clients that are homosexual before. I've done a gay custody battle before, and the issues get very complex. And the states should deal with those. The states should reflect the values of their constituents. And in our state, it's quite clear that we stand for traditional families. But at the same time, people are going to cohabitate. And there is litigation for non-married individuals, whether they're gay or straight. And the duty is of the state to provide a methodology to protect people that can't stand up for themselves, like children, like beneficiaries after people die. And that's the only role that I see that the state should have with regard to the regulation of that. It needs to be predictable, it needs to be fair and equitable. But if it came to the point where Utah would be forced to recognize marriages, if, for instance, the full faith and credit clause was struck down by the Supreme Court, I would be in favor of a national amendment.
Well, I'm surprised slightly.
Representative Cannon, why are you surprised? We'll give you an extra 20 seconds to explain your astonishment.
We've had such harsh differences on other issues that I'm a little surprised that on this one, obviously Mr. Burridge has thought it through. He's thought it through very carefully. I noticed he was nodding when we were talking about the full faith and credit clause. It's a federal issue. Once you get to the point where you think it through and actually you're rational, that's, I think, where you land on the issue. And so it's nice to have some common ground.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Wright?
Thank you. I'd like to return for a moment to the question of oil dependence. In January, President Bush declared that the United States is addicted to oil. And I think anyone who sits back and looks at this question can say that our oil reserves can't last forever. Mr. Burridge just referred to a need to invest more. You said we need to invest more. My question is, who is we? What specifically is the federal government's role in funding alternative energy?
First goes to Representative Cannon, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. That was exactly the question that occurred to me. Who is we? We need an environment where there's the ability to invest reasonably. And people have to understand the nature of what's going on in energy has changed dramatically since 1977 or 70s when we had these problems earlier. We have better control systems, and the cost of coal has gone from more than $100 a ton to $15 a ton in recent spot markets. So the ability to produce coal from liquids is great, but the cost of investing in a coal to liquids plant is also large. And so if we're going to give an incentive, it should be based upon an investment that makes some sense in the capital markets. And so I would support that kind of an investment. And frankly, the audience should understand that there is a dramatic fact of life and energy. That is that more than twice as much oil exists in Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado than in all of the Middle East. We just have to get it out of the ground, and the technologies have changed enough. So I think you're going to see serious production. There are 4 different technologies emerging today that are market-based, and we may have to give them some kind of subsidy. They currently have a subsidy, but it's a very short-term subsidy. It's the ethanol subsidy that will allow us to produce vast amounts of oil out of the Intermountain West here.
Mr. Burridge?
Again, when I say we, I mean that the federal government invests and subsidizes all kinds of energy sources right now. And I'm more interested in advocating for renewable energy that is going to protect our future and our children. Right now, the hydrogen technology is very exciting. There's actually some technology right now where you can put a solar power panel on your house and fuel your car in your garage. And the amounts of money that this government is spending on old technology, dirty technology that's causing a national security risk to our country is wrong-headed. And I'm an advocate for having domestically produced energy sources, whether it's clean coal, whether it's cellulosic ethanol, whether it's wind down on I-70. There are all kinds of things that would be great for our district if we took a different approach to how we look at energy, but that's going to mean we have change in the power brokers in Washington.